management of database users is a crucial component of data security because it allows us to control each user's access rights and identify who is using the database. User access will become very messy and challenging to maintain over time if a database does not have a proper user management system in place and the roles assigned to it. On that note, hey everyone, welcome to SimpliCode's YouTube channel. I hope you guys are doing good and staying safe. In today's session, we'll be discussing about user and role management in MongoDB and understand various commands that are used to perform these two technicalities. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's topic. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, consider getting subscribed to our channel SimpliCode to stay updated with all the latest tech content. And hit that bell icon to never miss an update from us. So firstly, let us discuss what are user management commands. Now, user management commands are basically used to manage the user access to the database. MongoDB offers an internal method called db.createUser method that allows user to be added to this system. Now, unlike conventional databases like SQL or relational databases, MongoDB users are connected to a local database known as authentication database. And additionally, unique identifiers include the authentication database and the user's name assigned to it. And consequently, if two users are created in different databases but have the same names, they are recognized as two separate users. Therefore, rather than creating the user multiple times in various databases, one should allow a single user to have the rights or roles to the relevant database instead of creating the user multiple times in different databases. So let's say if one wants to create a single user with permissions on multiple databases, we can give the access to that particular person. So that is basically what is user management is all about in MongoDB. Now that is done using various commands in MongoDB database. Now first we have the most important one, which is createUser. This method basically is used to create a new user in your MongoDB instance. Next, we have the drop all users from database. It is used to delete all the users from a database or the collection of data that you have in your documents, right? And next, we have the drop user command, which is used to grant a task and its privileges to a user. Next, we have grant roles to user. It is basically assigning a role and its associated privileges that can be given to a user on a regular basis. And finally, next we have revoke roles from user, which is used to remove the access to the user role that we have given earlier. Next, we have the update user. This method basically is used to update a user's data. And finally, we have users info. So let's say if you want to return the information of the users that you have created, you can use the user info. So these are some of the major user management commands that we use in database. Now you will understand it more clearly when we get into the execution part. So for now, let's just understand what this is. Okay, let's move ahead and understand what are role management commands now. Now, roles grant users access to MongoDB resources by providing several built-in roles that enable the administrators or the users to control the access to a MongoDB system. Although these roles cannot describe the desired set of privileges, one can create new roles in a particular database time to time. So, except for functions created in the admin database, a role can only include rights that applies to its database and those inherited from other roles, and only the user who has granted this access has this permission in order to control and access the data from that MongoDB database. So similar to user management, we have various different commands here as well. The first one is create role. It is basically used to create a role for the user database and say what you can perform to that database. Next, we have drop role. It basically removes the role that was set by the user. So, which is the opposite of create role. So if you want to drop a role that you have assigned to the user, you can use the drop role command. Next, we have drop all rows from database. Now, let's say if you have created a user and given, let's say 5 to 6 roles to that particular user. Now, due to some external factors or reasons, if you want to delete all those roles at a time, you can use drop all rows from database command, which basically removes all the rows that the users from the database has set up. Next, we have the grant privileges to role. It is used to assign privileges to a role that the user chooses. And finally, we have the update role, which basically updates the role that was set up by the user. Now, again, these are some of the major commands that we use in MongoDB. If you want to learn more about these, you can go to MongoDB website and clearly understand what are the different commands that we are using. And we will basically execute them in MongoDB shell, and only then you'll understand how important and how they exactly get executed. So let's dive directly into MongoDB shell. But before that, we will just see a simple example where we'll understand how user and role management command works. Now, I'm using a simple database which is employees, and then I'm creating a user, which is the syntax is followed as db.createUser, and then I'm giving username as Rohan123, and I'm giving the password 123abc. And next, I'm also giving the roles to this user. That is, I'm giving the read operation. That is, the user who have the access to this database employees can only read the information. That is, he can just view the data, but he cannot make any changes to this DB employees table. So I hope you understood this. So let us now directly jump into the execution part. So as you can see, MongoDB shell has started, and the basic command is basically to show the different databases present in our MongoDB instance. So for that, I'm using the show dbs command, which will retrieve all the databases like admin, company DB, config, local, SimpliCode1, student DB, and test. So we know that before we enable access control, you should create a user that can create users and assign roles to them once access control is enabled. So this user admin will then use to create and maintain other users and role, which needs to be assigned a suitable role to enable it to do so. So you can have various roles like admin role. You can give the read operation, you can give write operation, and you can simultaneously give read and write operations on the data that you want to perform the analysis or the changes you want to make. So before creating a MongoDB user, actually it is worth thinking about the task the user is going to perform. Now let's say I have a database here, let's say SimpliCode1, and I have a user who constantly changes or updates data from that database. Then I can give the role to that particular user is read write operation. So probably there will be several users with the same level of permissions also. So the smartest option is to create a role and assign it to each of these users. And by only changing a role, you will update the permission where all the users who has the access to it. Otherwise, a change to an access requirement for a group or a group of users would need to be done for every single user every time. So the first step is to change context to database in which you're going to create this role. So let's just create a simple role to a database. So for that, I'm using the SimpliCode database only here. So let's say use SimpliCode 1. So it is switched to SimpliCode 1. So when adding a new user to the specified database, and in our case it's SimpliCode 1, we use the db.createUser method, which is the fundamental command. So it is important to note that adding users with option is much simpler than inserting a user document into a non-relational database. So the query is followed as db.createUser. Make sure the U is capital, otherwise it will throw an error. Open the brackets, and inside that mention the keyword user. So let's say I'm giving the username as, let's take a Rohan1234, close the brackets, and then mention the password pwd. So you can either give a password or you can give a password prompt. Password prompt is basically will ask you to enter the password every time you request access to this database. So I'm just using the password prompt command here. And then you have to specify the roles that you want to create your database. So let's say I'm just giving a simple role as, let's take as read operation, right? So for that, I'm providing roles, and within the square brackets, mention the role keyword, semicolon, and since we are concerned with read, I'm giving it as read, and then mention the database that you are giving the access to. So the database is SimpliCode 1. All right. Make sure it is in inverted commas again, otherwise it will throw an error. So I think the code is done. Let's just execute this. Again, close the square brackets. Make sure to check all the brackets are being properly closed, otherwise it will throw an error. We have a square bracket, and then I think, oops, again another one. This, okay. So it says enter password. Now you can give password of your choice. So let's say I'm taking 123 qwerty dot. Okay. So it says it is successfully executed. Let's just walk through what we have created here. Now, to create a user who will manage a single database here, which is the SimpliCode one, we are using the same command, which is the db.createUser, and in that we are giving a particular username and then we are giving roles to it. So the first step is basically to specify the username and password, which needs to be created. And the second step is to assign a role for the user, which in this case needs to be a general user, not the user admin, right? So we are just assigning a role, which is the read operation here. This role basically allows the user to have privileges only to the database specified in the DB option, which is SimpliCode 1. So the DB parameter specified the database to which the user should have the administrative privileges on. So the output basically shows that it was successfully created and it is asking for a password. Now you can generally give a password of your own choice, or you can either just give a password prompt and then you can enter the password. So this is how you create a user. Now next you have to manage these users. So for that you have to understand the roles which you need to define. Now there's a whole list of roles available in MongoDB as discussed earlier. Now for this one we have given read. Now there is also read write. There is also user admin, which we give for administrative privileges, or someone who needs to be a database administrator who constantly works on that database. So for that we provide with that. So then we have this again read role, which basically allows you to read only access to databases, and then there is read write also, which provides read and write access to the database, which means that the user can insert, delete, update commands on collections in that database. So let's just create another user wherein we'll create multiple roles and understand how it works here. So again, I'm just copy pasting this and we'll create another user and see. So let's just change some of the names here. So let's take the new user as user 1, and let's take the password prompt same, and then we will assign different roles now for different databases for this user. Okay. Now, once we have created a read operation for SimpliCode, right? Now, let's take another database, let's say company DB. So for that, I'm creating another role, which is read write, okay? So there is a small error. So I'm just copy pasting the file, which I've already created to show you. So I'm just creating a new user, and then I'm creating a user named Rohan123, and let's take the password as 123abc, and the roles that I'm giving to this user are from various database. So for, let's say, for SimpliCode 1, I'm giving the role as read operation, and for company DB I'm giving read operation, and for student DB I'm giving the read write operation. So MongoDB defines roles uniquely by combining the database with the role name, and each role is scoped to the database you have created, but MongoDB generally stores all the role information in this collection in the admin database. So for instance, the role and grant role actions on the database resource must ensure that the roles are created and granted in the database. So let's just execute this and see the output. So it says okay one, that means you have successfully created a user. Now in order to see all the users that you have created in the SimpliCode 1, you can simply use the show users command, which will list out all the users that you have created. So it says SimpliCode 1.rohan123 db SimpliCode 1, and the read roles that you have created is read write operations for this database, for read operation for company DB, read operation for SimpliCode, and so on. And you can also show the roles as well separately. So it will just show all the different roles. So let's say role DB owner, DB SimpliCode 1, and like in a similar way, all the operations, all the roles that you have given will be showcased here. I think we have pretty much covered the basics of user and role management commands in this. I hope you guys have understood. And with that, we have come to the end of today's session. I hope the tutorial has gone through all the important aspects of how to grant roles and rights to a specific users within a MongoDB instance. And thank you for watching the video, guys. If you found this tutorial informative and helpful, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and colleagues. If you have any further queries regarding any of the topics covered in today's session, feel free to let us know in the comment section below, and our team of experts will be more than happy to help resolve all your queries at the earliest. We'll see you in the next video. If you want to learn more about MongoDB concepts and topics, we have a dedicated playlist on our channel, so make sure you check that out. Also, let us know in the comment section below on which topics on MongoDB we have to cover next, and we will provide it to you right away. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay safe and keep coding.